Mr. Majewski's Anatomy 32 class lecture, Chapter 24, Digestive System, Part 3, Small and Large Intestines. On the pancreas. Alright, we're going to start with the pancreas. Like I said, pancreas 2. It has a head, a body, and a tail. Wow. The head is nestled in the duodenum of the small intestines. The pancreas has two main ducts. It has the pancreatic duct, which is the larger one that opens into the duodenum via the hepatopancreatic ampule that fuses with the common bile duct of the liver. The second duct is the accessory duct, and it opens directly into the duodenum without fusing with anything. And these ducts release the pancreatic juices and enzymes. These include the pancreatic juice, which is slightly alkaline and buffers the acidic gastric juice in the chyme, and also tenders off pepsin, because again, that enzyme only functions under acidic conditions. It also releases a number of digestive enzymes. The pancreatic amylase, which is there to digest carbohydrates, the enzymes trypsin, chymotrypsin, carboxypeptidase, and elastase, which digests proteins, pancreatic lipase, which will digest fats, and ribonuclease and deoxyribonuclease, that digests nucleic acids. Disorders of the pancreas can include pancreatitis, which is an inflammation of the pancreas. Again, itis usually means some sort of inflammation. And pancreatic cancer, which, because it is very difficult to detect, is almost always fatal. Alright, small intestine. Small intestine has three main regions. The duodenum, which is a C-shaped section that's only a few inches long and comes directly after the stomach. There's a second is the jejunum, which is about 3 feet long and found mostly in the upper left quadrant. And then the ileum, which is about 6 feet long and mostly found in the right lower quadrant. And the ileum ends in the ileocecal sphincter, which then will allow whatever's in the small intestine to enter the large intestine. So when you look at the small intestine, you see it has lots of ribbons of tissue. Basically, these are composed of the villi, which are basically there to increase the surface area inside the intestine, which then allows for increased absorption. Because in the intestine, not only do we have most of the chemical digestion occurring, but we also have most of the absorption of the nutrients into the body also occurring. Within the villi is the lacteal duct, which is a duct of the lacteal vessel, which is a vessel of the lymphatic system, and it carries a lot of the lipids from what we eat to the liver. If you look closely at the villi, you see that they are composed of a variety of cells. You have the absorptive cells, which are found throughout the length of the villi, and these cells have what are called microvilli, which are little protrusions along their apical surface. And also on these are the brush border enzymes, enzymes who are involved in breaking things down and in pulling into the absorptive cell important nutrients. There are also the goblet cells that produce mucus, because again, that helps to move stuff along. You have the enteroendocrine cells. They are involved in secreting certain hormones such as secretin, GIP, and cholecystokinin. Basically enzymes, hormones that tell the small intestine to do what it needs to do. And then there's also the Paneth cells. They secrete lysozyme, which helps break down bacteria, and they are also capable of phagocytosis, so they can engulf any infectious agents that we may accidentally digest. And here's just another view of the small intestine. So, functions of the small intestine. Well, obviously it includes the complete chemical digestion of carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. It also is engaged in what's called segmentation, which is basically a localized kind of mixing of the chyme that is in the small intestine, where it has a pattern of contractions of its circular muscles that will basically squish the contents back and forth. The small intestine is also involved in Peristalsis, again, it needs to move the chyme along toward the large intestine. And this can even be done in a very slow manner, which is referred to as migrating motility complex. And it's involved in the absorption of 90% of the nutrients and water that we need. All right, the large intestine. Eventually the chyme will get into the large intestine through the ileocecal sphincter. The first component of the large intestine is the cecum. Cecum is just a small pouch that holds the beginning of the large intestine and also is attached to a structure called the appendix. The appendix is basically a coiled little 3-inch structure that people aren't really sure exactly what it does, if anything. From here, the chyme is going to move into the ascending colon. The ascending colon is along the right side of the abdomen, and when it reaches about the level of the beginning of the liver, it will then make a sharp left turn, which is called the right colic flexure. Left turn called the right colic flexure. From there you enter the transverse colon, which continues across the abdomen toward the left, and then that will make a turn called the left colic flexure. And from there, the chyme would enter the descending colon and pass down below the level of the left iliac crest, enter the sigmoidal colon, which is sort of curved or S-shaped, until finally it reaches the rectum, which is the last 8 inches in the GI tract. The rectum then ends in the anal canal, which is of course followed by the anus. The anus has 2 sets of anal sphincters, the internal anal sphincter, which is smooth muscle that we cannot control, and the external anal sphincter, which is skeletal muscle and we can control it. Alright, the large intestine. Well, the large intestine looks about like we expect, except along its mucosal layer it has what are referred to as intestinal glands. And these glands basically produce mucus, and that's it for the most part. Also running along the full length of the large intestine are these 3 thick bands of smooth muscle. They actually lie in the muscularis layer of the large intestine, and basically because they are always somewhat contract, they are what's forming those little pouches that you see along the length of the large intestine. Those pouches are called haustra, and they are just pouches. Functions of the large intestine. Well, you have haustral churning, peristalsis, and mass peristalsis, which drives the contents of the colon toward the rectum. Haustral churning is basically involved in mixing the chyme up. Peristalsis is a slow migration of the chyme, and mass peristalsis is a fast movement of the contents in the large intestine. This often occurs after you've eaten a large meal to make room for the next set of material that's coming along. Also found within the large intestine, as is also found in the small intestine, are bacteria. And these bacteria do a variety of things. They convert some of the protein that may be left into amino acids. They can then break down those amino acids, and they can also produce some valuable vitamins for us, such as the B vitamins and vitamin K. In the large intestine, there is some absorption of water and ions and vitamins. Near the end of the small intestine, at the rectum, feces is formed, and then eventually there's defecation, which is the emptying of the contents of the rectum. Some disorders that can occur in the large intestine, well, you have diarrhea, which is where you have an increase in the frequency, volume, and fluid content of the feces. Then there's constipation, which is where a person has infrequent or difficult defecation caused by the decreased motility of the intestines. So they are pushing things along at a much slower rate. Because the feces spends such a longer time in the large intestine, they become dry and hard as water is absorbed out of them. And then there's also colorectal cancer. This is an extremely deadly cancer. However, it can be detected early on when the colonoscopy is performed, and you see pulps or precancerous growths, and then those pulps can be removed. And that's it for the chapter 24. 4 digestive system lecture.